Hi guys, so today on the bench we have this Sony cassette deck. The model number is TC-K650ES, the ES being their flagship range at the time. This machine came out in 1990 and the retail price of this I believe was $400. So $400 1990, that was it's quite an expensive player. This is a 3-head, 3-motor cassette deck. So 3 heads, as I've said in other videos, 3 heads is where you can live monitor what you're recording on the tape. So you can hear what's on the tape that you've just recorded as you're recording, rather than having to rewind and play it back. And that way you can adjust the inputs to exactly match what you want the output to be. It has BIOS adjustment controls. It has HX Pro, which is the headroom extension. It's got Dolby B and C noise reduction and motorized door as well. So this has a motorized open and close. I do like the ones with the motorized open and close option on them. Now this one does have a problem with it, as expected. When we turn it on, we hear the Capstone motor running, because the Capstone motor on these runs the entire time that the machine is switched on, whether it's playing or not. So if we switch this on and listen, you might be able to hear that motor in there. If we put a tape in, the door mechanism still works. We put a tape in and press play. We get no movement on the tape. However, fast forward and rewind do work. So there's 2 belts in this machine. There's one on the capstan, the main capstan belt, and then there's another one around the other motors which drives the mechanism. So I'm expecting that the capstan belt has failed in this. Should be fairly easy to do. So what I'll do is we'll get this open and I will show you the inside. Now, when you first lift the lid on this and look inside, you will be forgiven for thinking that there's something wrong in here. This main board is supposed to be like this, on an angle like that. Now, the first time I looked in one of these machines, I was like, what's going on here? But this board is actually angled like this for a reason. I think they did it as a cost-saving exercise, but in terms of servicing, it's not that much more difficult. It does mean that if you need to take the front panel off, you need to take the board out as well. So normally this board is flat on the bottom of the casing, and then you would have a ribbon cable from here to the display board at the front. On this one, you can't see it in shots here, but the top of this board is physically soldered, hard soldered onto the front board. So that is why it's angled like that. But yeah, it does look odd. The first time I saw one of these, I thought it had been dropped in transit or something, and the board had become dislodged and moved around. But yeah, this is how it's meant to look. Now, this cassette mechanism, as with a couple of others that I've done already, this looks easy to get to. So there's 2 screws at the top here, 2 underneath. All these cables are all socketed and plugged, so we can just disconnect all of those cables, and this should pull right out, and then we'll be able to get to that belt. So here's the drive out of the machine. We can get a first look at this, and you can see straight away, now there's the belt. Let's come out. What is this condition like? Oh yes, it's just it's not actually turned to goop, which most of them do, but there's no, all the elastic has gone out of that, so that will need to be replaced. There is one more belt on these, which is just here. Might be able to see that. Let's just move this light. This is the belt just there on this pulley. So it comes from this motor around this pulley. They come as two in a set, the Capstone and that one, so I will replace that as well. But at least, yeah, it hasn't turned to the usual goop, so I haven't got a big cleaning job to do on these reels. And I will need to clean the tape heads as well. But it all looks pretty good, pretty clean. Okay, well, it looks as though that is the only problem with this deck. I'm going to order the belts and then I will return to the video. I have now got the belts. It's been a few weeks since the last part of the video, so we will continue with getting these fitted. As said previously, there are two belts. This one is the main Capstone belt. So looking around the back, this is the one that will come around the Capstone wheel and the motor pulley, which is down there. Now this one's fairly easy to get to. We can just take this plate off with the motor and the belt slips on there, no problem. There is another belt which is just there, and this is from this motor to that pulley there in the mechanism. Now this one controls the other functions of the deck, so even things like the door eject are driven from these gears. Now the belt looks okay. It actually doesn't need replacing, but I'm going to anyway. I have the belt. It comes in the set, so I might as well put it in whilst it's apart. Now there are two ways of fitting this. One is you can loosen, once this Capstone wheel plate is off, there are a few more screws and you can loosen this plate here. So there's some screws around the back here, and then this plate can move upwards slightly. It can't go all the way, but it sometimes can be moved enough just to sneak the belt over that cog there and get that in place. If we can do that, then that is the easiest option. If it doesn't move up enough, then what I need to do is remove this plate. So the plate here with the light at the back, that plate needs to be unscrewed, and then underneath that there is a small cog which needs to be released. If you have a look on my other videos, I'll put the link above here, you will be able to see me take that actual cog off one of those other machines. It's very similar to this mechanism. So if I don't get around to doing that on this one, you can take a look on there. But yeah, I'm going to see if I can get this belt on the easy way. So I need to get it apart. So let me take this plate off and we can get to the Capstone wheel. So there's just 3 screws holding that on. disconnect the wire, and then the plate comes off. And you can see if you were just doing the capstan belt, it comes around here and around the motor pulley. So that's the easy one to do. Now the next one, as you can see, is under this plate. So what I'm going to do is I'll remove the screws from around the plate and see if we can lift it up enough to get that belt on. Going to take the capstan wheel out as well. And when you remove the capstan wheel, if we look at the capstan, there's a small clear washer that's on there. Now the reason for that is twofold. One is to keep the capstan in place, so it slides down and stops at the end there and stops the capstan just moving backwards and forwards. But it also stops any grease that happens to be on the spindle of the capstan actually coming through and onto the capstan itself. See, it's quite dirty, that capstan. I'm going to need to clean that. So yeah, there's a small clear plastic washer here. So as I pull the capstan wheel back, that washer will slide along. You can see that. Just be careful when you get to the end there. It just needs to be lifted out the way. And then the capstan can come all the way out. Okay, a few more screws. So you can see there, after removing those screws, there's a small amount of movement here. And if you have a look on the edge there, what we're trying to do is move this up enough where there's a gap at the top of this cog, and then we can just slide the belt over the top. But we can't put too much pressure on that because it will damage the cog, the one that I said we'd have to remove. If you pull too hard on this, it'll break that. I don't think it's quite, I think it will go, but as I said, I don't want to put too much pressure on that. I don't want to break the mechanism. So what I'm going to do, I will wind out the cassette door, so I'll have to move that motor manually in order to open the cassette door, take that plate off, take the cog off, and that's the only thing stopping this coming all the way off. So I'll get that done now. You don't actually need to wind out that mechanism to open the door. The eject is simply a catch on here, so we lift this up, The door opens like so. So that reveals the two screws on this plate at the back. And this is the mechanism here that's stopping that board coming out. So what you need to do, this small washer on there is a retaining clip that needs to come off, and then these two cogs lift off the spindle, and then the back can be removed. Just got to get your screwdriver just underneath it and lever it off gently. That's it. So that's the clip. And now this can be removed. And hopefully this can now come off. Yeah, the old belt is a little bit soft. It's lost its elastic slightly. So put the new belt on. It's round this pulley, and then this cog drops back in place. Now there's two little studs sticking up there, which the belt can hook onto. I only found this out recently, but they allow you to put this belt in place before this motor comes back down, so you don't have to worry about trying to fish this around this cog here. When this is back in place, you can simply just prise the belt off these hooks and it'll land successfully on this gear here. And one thing to try and avoid is moving any of this mechanism. In the last video I did move it, and it took me a long time to get it back in place. So if you can, try and avoid moving any of this. Take it off carefully, put the belt on, put it back on carefully. So that's hopefully what's going to happen here. Just make sure your little tape switches, these are leaf switches that engage in the top of the cassette. So there's the record tab and tape type. That's what these are. Just make sure that they go back through these holes at the top. looks as though it's clicked down correctly. So put the screws back in. Okay, so with a couple of screws in, we can put this belt onto the motor. If you can just see there, the belt is just poised in place to go around that motor. So all we need to do is just lift that belt up, turn this round, and it's now on that motor. So that's that belt done. I'm going to go ahead and just refit this on the other side. So this pulley goes back on. And that retaining clip needs to be fitted back. Sorry, I'm covering this up, I know, but it's a little bit tricky to get it on camera. If you hold one half of it down and then use a screwdriver just to press the other half on. That's it. I can put this back. Just going to give that a wipe. It's a bit of grease off these cogs, and I don't want to get some grease on this face yet. Okay, so I'm just going to take the opportunity to clean this capstone while it's out. Can do this when it's in the machine, but it's easier now. Just some IPA. Also going to grease that slightly. Just going to put some fresh grease on this. And then plastic retaining washer that we took off before, that needs to go back on there. It's best to move this down equal pressure on both sides. Okay. So we can go ahead and fit this belt now. I think the easiest way to do this is just to put it around the capstan roller first, like this, and then hook the motor pulley onto it. Missed off that cable grip there. And one more screw there for the earthing cable. And that's the mechanism back together. So what I want to do next is just clean these heads, clean the tape path. I might demagnetize these heads as well. So just open this cassette door. So you might be able to see those heads are quite dirty. I'm just going to use some IPA and some cotton buds. Just run those over the top. Get the dirt on there. Okay, not so important, but I'll do the erase head as well. Again, it's just a good idea to go over the whole tape path and clean off all the dust and dirt. Also going to do the pinch roller. So what I do with this, just go backwards and forwards as I'm rotating it slowly. You see the muck on there. So I'll continue to do this and then I will come back. So the pinch roller is clean, heads are clean, tape path is clean. So the next thing I want to do is demagnetize these heads. So I've just got one of these cheap head demagnetizers, and there are a number of different ways to use this. You see people saying one way how to use it, and then somebody else. What I do, this is switched on at the moment, I just place it near the head. Don't actually touch it, it is protected, this, but the heads are easily damaged. Just run it around the head, the erase head. I also do the capstone as well. And then the important thing is to just bring it away from the deck, and then it can be unplugged. And that's the heads demagnetized. One thing on this deck that I like is the stabilizer on the front, the cassette stabilizer. A few of the higher end decks have this stabilizer or something similar. So what that is, when you close the door, this presses hard against the cassette shell, against the back of the mechanism, and stops it moving. Because if the cassette shell does move slightly in or out like this, it's going to adjust the tape path slightly, and the tape path moving over the heads differently is going to be a different azimuth, and you won't get consistent results. So the cassette stabilizers are not just a gimmick, they are useful. But what I like about this one is that it's got a rubber coating here. This presses up against the cassette shell. Now most of the ones that I've seen have all been a foam pad here, and over time, if it's an 80s cassette deck, that foam pad just deteriorates and there's nothing left of it. But this rubber has survived. It's still quite springy, so that's going to work well. Right, this is done now as far as I can tell. So what I'll do is we'll get it back in the machine and we'll give it a try. eject works. That would indicate that that mechanism is back correctly. That looks to be working fine. Put this cover back on. So that's the end of this video. That is the belt replacement for a Sony TC-K650ES. I hope you found it useful. If you've liked the video, please give it a like for me, and I will see you on the next one.